Good morning, good morning, everybody. Welcome back, Bruchim Habayim, Shechiyanu v'Kimanu v'Giyanu l'Zman Hazeh for a new semester and Zman of learning together. Torah Achsidus, Pnimiyus HaTorah. To be able to connect our internal souls and hearts and minds and beings with Ein Sof, with infinity, with Hashem. So welcome back, everybody. Just to announce, tomorrow morning there'll be a shir as well, 8 o'clock Friday, because I want to finish the Maimer. We're going to start today a Maimer and hopefully finish tomorrow. Next week I'm away, so we're not going to have next week, but we'll resume after that, Bli Neder Be'ezer Hashem. So tomorrow there'll also be a shir, okay, Friday. So today we're going to learn a Maimer in Torah Parshas Lech Lecha. It's a Maimer that Alter Rebbe said at a bris. It's the Maimer Velo Yekorei Shimcha Avram v'Haya Shimcha Avram ki Ava Mein Goyim Nisaticha, page 23. On top it says Lech Lecha. It's the first column close to the bottom. In the Hebrew it's Yud Beis, column 1. Yud Beis, column 1. You see on the right column, close to the bottom. Today's class is graciously dedicated by Julie Cohen and her husband and children, La'elu Nishmas, in loving memory of her dear mother, Miriam Mira, Bat Helen, who passed away on the 5th day of Iyar last year. May her beautiful neshama have an aliyah, and may her soul be a source of endless inspiration, love, and blessing to her entire family, to you and to the entire family, among all of our people, with good health, abundance, and all the blessings. Thank you very, very much. Tehei nishmas atzura b'tzur hachayim. We should be zeicha to hekitza v'ranenu, sheichne offer b'karav mamash. I also want to thank, we have a Rabbi Shmuel Silver, who's in charge for all the technology and live stream and IT, and does a marvelous, marvelous job for this class and many other classes. And we're honored to have him physically, not just virtually. So thank you very much, Rabbi Shmuel. So this Maimer, V'lo Yekorei Shimcha Avram, is printed in Torah Parshas Lech Lecha. Alter Rebbe said it at a bris, the bris of his great grandson. The Alter Rebbe said this Maimer in the year Tovkuf Samach Vav. We actually know the date also. It was Thursday. Parshas told us Erev Rosh Chodesh Kislev. So Thursday, Chavtes Cheshvan, Erev Rosh Chodesh Kislev. Parshas told us Tovkuf Samach Vav, which means it was said in the month of Cheshvan, the last day, the 29th of Cheshvan. That's 1805. The bris was his great-grandson, Baruch Shalom, the oldest son of the Tzemach Tzedek. So the Alter Rebbe, of course, had sons and daughters. One of his daughters was Rebbe Tzendver Leah, who passed away very young, and she had a baby when she passed away, whose name was Rebbe Nachum Mendel, the Tzemach Tzedek, who became the third Lubavitcher Rebbe. And his oldest son, he had 7 sons, the Tzemach Tzedek. The youngest was Reb Shmuel, that later became the Rebbe Maharash, the 4th Lubavitcher Rebbe. The oldest was Reb Baruch Shalom. At his bris, once the youngest son was born, the Alter Rebbe already passed away. The Mittler Rebbe also passed away. But when the oldest was born, Reb Baruch Shalom, Tovkuf Samach Vav, the Alter Rebbe was living in Liadi, in Belarus, and at the bris, he said this Maimer. So there's a Maimer that he said at the bris. It happens to be just interesting information. The lineage of the Rebbe to the Tzemach Tzedek and the Alter Rebbe is through Reb Baruch Shalom. In other words, Reb Baruch Shalom was the Rebbe's father's. His father was Reb Levi Yitzchak, his father was Reb Baruch Shneir, his father was Reb Levi Yitzchak, his father was Reb Baruch Shalom. So actually the Rebbe's lineage to the Tzemach Tzedek and the Alter Rebbe is through this boy whose at bris, the Alter Rebbe said this Maimer, just for information. He was the only one of the children of the Tzemach Tzedek who refused to become a Rebbe after his father's passing, the only one. Everybody else went to their own place. The Rebbe Maharash stayed in Lubavitch. He's the only one who refused. And actually his grandson was the Rebbe. So this Maimer was said at his bris. And then Shabbos afterwards, which means the third day of the bris was Thursday morning. Oh, today's Thursday. I guess Thursday morning, I don't know, but I guess Thursday. Sometimes it says Thursday. On Shabbos, which says Yom HaShlishi Lemila, the third day of the bris, Shabbos told us, which was already base Kislev, the Alter Rebbe said, a hemshech of the Maimer, which is an explanation on, the Rebbe would often say a Maimer in a few sections, and the second one would be an explanation. Sometimes he would do a third explanation. So that was said on Shabbos. That's the second part of the Maimer, V'ivdila Paraychus Lechem, in continuation here of the Torah, which starts on the next page. Okay. So the Maimer begins on the pasuk from Parshas Lech Lecha. Now, even though it was said Parshas told us, but it was at a bris, so a Mela, he discussed the pasuk from Parshas Lech Lecha, and therefore it's put into Torah Parshas Lech Lecha, because it's not here based on dates, it's based on content, on the theme. So, of course, what happens in Parshas Lech Lecha is that Hashem asks Avram Avinu to do a circumcision, a bris milah. And he says, your name will not be called anymore Avram, it will be called Avraham. And he explains why. Yekorei shimcha Avram v'haya shimcha Avraham. He's going to add an hey. Ki av hamoin goyim nisaticha. Because now I have made you, I have conferred upon you a new status. Av hamoin goyim, the father of multitudes of nations. Hamoin means like a lot, many, like hamoinam. So now you'll be a father of hamoin goyim, of tremendous multitudes of nations. That's going to be now your role. So Avram, without a hey, is just Avram. He'll explain what that means. Once you have a hey, so now you hey. Avraham, so hey mem is like hamoin. Now you're a father, but you're not just a father for one particular people. Hamoin goyim, hey mem, you have which is Rosh Tevis, hamoin, that many nations will be mentored and inspired by you. Now obviously the question is, what's the shaykhus to the bris? Like, okay, you want to add a name, add a name. You know, it depends all on the bris. And what's the idea of this? Avamayim goyim nesatich. So that's what to explain this whole inyan. What's this idea of changing a name? And the change of name comes dafka through the bris. And what is the idea of the changing of the name? That he shouldn't just be a father to one particular people, but to all of the nations. Ha'inyan ki hatam. Hatam lemila, the reason for milah is, what's the whole idea behind bris? Really, this maimer is going to explain the inner meaning of a bris milah, right? All of us had a bris, and many of us watched many brisin, and some of us had the schus to bring our own children into a bris. It's not such an easy sight. I don't know if you're from the people that stay there, you know, very, very close, so you run far away. You know, you run to the hills or whatever it is. It's an intense experience. Yeah. So, you know, we're all used to it for thousands of years, but this memory really explains what's the whole pnimius of the inyan. What's this whole idea? A child is created a certain way, and then right at the beginning of their life, at 8 days, you know, a surgery needs to happen, which is what the bris milah means. So inyan ki atam lemila diksiv, the pasuk says in Bereshis, Hashabara lekim lasas l'saken. At the end of Vayechulu, we say it Friday night. Yeah, it says ki voy Shabbos mikol malachtoi Hashabara lekim lasas. On Shabbos, Hashem rested from all the work that He created to do. The word lasas is a strange term; it doesn't really belong there, because you're saying Vayechulu Hashemayim v'aretz v'chol tzvam. Hashem rested by Yom Hashri mikol malachtoi shalasa. He blessed the seventh day. Vayikadosh Osai. He rested from all the malacha that he did, that he made. What's Ashabara Elokim? He created it to do. He created it to do. He created it. What did he create it to do? He created it to be, not to do. So Chazal say, no, lasas lasakein. He didn't create it to be. He created it that you should repair it. Ashabara Elokim lasas means he created it. Chazal say this. The Medrash says, Rashi brings. Lasas means lasakein. He created it for there's something to be done, to be repaired, to fix. In other words, the world as is not the complete perfection. It's the beginning. It's a fertile place for work, but it's now a place where a partner could come in and do the rest of the work. That's the yesod. It still needs tikkun, fixing through the human being. What do you mean? You already created Adam and you created the universe. It wasn't created with perfection. It was created with tremendous precision and brilliance, and it's on some levels it's perfect. But the ultimate agenda was not perfected yet. Asher bara Elokim lasa is still something to do l'sak. And this is a very important fundamental idea that the Chazal are saying here, and it's right away in Bereshis. That it's not like we're intervening, like the world is perfect. What are you coming in to do things? You have to understand that there is a need for partnership here. We see this in many elements, right? In many elements, right? Just like it's in the physical world. We build homes and we make coats and we plant fruits and we plant wheat and then we grind the flour and we turn it into bread. In other words, the human being is a co-partner in repairing the world on every level. This is a story that says in Medrash Rabbah, Parsha Bereshis, Parsha Yud Aleph. This is a Medrash Rabbah on the pasuk Vayichulu Hashemayim. Tak on this Asher Bara Elokim Lasos. And he says over there, Sheshal ala Mila. There was a philosopher. The Medrash Rabbah says, Shal Philosophus Echad, which means there was a philosopher who asked Rabbi Hoshea. He asked him a question. Ala Mila im chavivi Mila lama nivra adam aral. I don't understand. If Hashem thinks that Mila is precious, is good, so create people that way. Why do you create every child on Aril, which means with a foreskin, and then you tell him to do the Mila? If you don't like the Aril, so don't create it. Like it's a funny thing. And he wanted to prove from this that the idea of circumcision is ludicrous. It's ridiculous. Just let the child be as is. What do you start cutting? What do you start making surgeries for? So he's saying that's what the Creator wants. If the Creator wants it, so he should have created it that way. Good question, right? V'hai Satshuva. So the Medrash brings the story that Rabbi answered this philosopher. Whatever was created in the 6 days of creation, there's always an upgrade. It needs more work. It needs tikkun. And he gives them an example. Turmusin. Turmusin is a particular type of legume that is very, very bitter. If you just harvest it and you eat it, it's going to make you sick, and it's not edible. And yet it's a wonderful, wonderful food. But what do? You take the turmusin and you have to cook it 7 times, and then you can eat it. So you can ask a question: if it was created to eat, right? Nature created it to eat, so what do you need work for? Just do it as is. So the answer is, everybody understand when it comes to nature, if I want to eat bread, I need a plant, and then I have to take the seed and I have to grind the kernel into flour and then knead it with water. In other words, and here it's not edible in any other way. It's not like it's edible, it's just not what you want. So this was the answer that he gave from Turmisin, Shetzrichin Tikkun, you have to cook it. Very good. The Rebbe says a mashal is not daimel and nimshal. Like how do you compare the two? Turmisin is a food, it's grown, it's bitter, so you take it in water and it's sweetened. You cook it 7 times apparently and it sweetens it. The nimshal seems a little more, it's much more serious, right? You're talking about a part of a body that's in the body and you're cutting it off and it causes pain, it causes anguish. The mashal and the nimshal don't seem consistent with each other. The mashal, you're telling me, okay, you need to prepare things, fine. You could also say that if you want a coat and it's cold. Yeah, we're not born with coats. You have to shear the sheep of the wool and make a coat, a beautiful wool coat, a wonderful warm wool coat, or a leather coat from an animal. So we understand you want shoes, you want to wear shoes, so they also have to be developed. And you want to wear pants, they also have to be developed. The same is true everything else, right? You want a bathroom, so you have to build a bathroom. We understand that. But here, it's already a much more serious thing. The child actually is born with something, and you're removing it. Right? Turmusin, you're not removing it. So the truth is, you could have a mashal, because anything that grows, for example, even a grain of wheat, you have to remove the chaff, you have to remove what's called the shiboilus, the husk, right? The klipa, and then you get to it. But if still, it's a much easier process than this process of milah. And yet why does he bring turmisin? He could bring anything in the world. Anything in the world you need work. If you want apples, you need to plant an apple tree. And you have to take care of it. I mean, everything is that way. Everything in the world needs tikkun. Nothing is just a mamish kamay shahu. But he brings dafkips one mashal from turmisin, which is not even then it was a popular food. The Mefarshim say it was a popular food, and that's why he brought it. But if he brings this mashal, why don't you bring a mashal of wheat? Same thing. How do you eat bread? So obviously there's something in this mashal. What's the mashal and the nimshal? It's no in Maimer, we say in the morning, Hashem renews in His goodness every single day. Ma'aseh Bereishis is the work of creation. Now the word is tamid. Tamid. He renews it constantly. Even though it says every day, but it's every day continuously. B'chol yom tamid ma'aseh bereishis. Tamid hu achidush yesh me'ayin. Constantly there's the chiddush, there's the innovation of yesh, something from nothingness, from ayin. V'inyan is havos yesh v'gashmi ma'ayin v'ruchni. This chiddush, that a yesh v'gashmi, something that's a yesh, something that has a being, an existence, a defined existence. And furthermore, it's a physical existence, it's a defined physical existence. And it comes from ayin, which means nothingness, but really better to say no-thingness. It comes from ayin, which is nothingness is no-thingness. It's coming from something that's ayin. It's not tangible. It's not a yesh. It's not a gashmi. It's ruchni. It's completely beyond gashmi. It's a ruchni, meaning it's metaphysical. It's spiritual. It's transcendent. It can't just be this way. Based on what the pasuk says later in Shmos, when he speaks about the building of the Mishkan, so he says you should have a paroiches, a curtain that separates from the holy, between the holy and the holy of holies. In the Mishkan, you had this section that was called Kodesh HaKadoshim, the holy of holies, that only the Kohen Gadol would go in once a year. And then you had a paroiches, a curtain, a veil, and that separated ben HaKodesh ben Kodesh HaKadosh. What's the shaychus here? So he explains. Ki Beis HaMikdash, basically what he's going to tell us is that Beis HaMikdash is like a little replica of the world. You know how people build their little Beis HaMikdashes, right? Like a little replica, right? So the whole world is like built into the structure of the Beis HaMikdash. So the Beis HaMikdash is like a small structure, so to speak, relative to the units, but essentially it is so intricate because it reflects the design of the universe. It reflects the design of the world. And that's why it's so precise with measurements. Every piece of furniture and every curtain and every detail, literally every beam and every bar and every peg. Like, why? You make a nice house because it's not stam. The entire structure, the structure is a miniature structure of the world. That's what he's going to explain. The Beis HaMikdash was a place. Over there was the source of the flow and the revelation of the Shekhinah, which came into the Holy of Holies. It was like the central, like the central nervous system of the divine flow that comes into the world. But for the flow to go from there further out, it couldn't be through complete revelation, through intense revelation. Why? So he says, Ke'im kain, because if yes, haya hakoil echad, everything would remain complete oneness. So it's communicated, but through a veil that separates. A masach is a veil, a curtain, mavdil which separates, makes a havdalah. This is the spiritual significance of the paroiches. It's not stam a curtain so people shouldn't walk in, or to warn them, or not to see. But it's also a fundamental existential idea that for this energy to be able to flow to a new domain, which is very different than Kodesh HaKadoshim, and you don't have that same intensity of echad, you need a paroiches which blocks some of the intensity of the flow. A boundary, yeah. A boundary. But not just a boundary that you cross over, it's a boundary that changes the quality of what comes through the veil. Uparoiches tirgim unkulus parsa. If you look in Chumash, very interesting. In Kabbalah and Chassidus, whenever they speak about the tzimtzum, the concealments, the layers, the veils, the word that's very often used is a parsa. The word parsa is the Aramaic translation of the word masach. If you look in Chumash, it says paroiches hamasach. The Targum Unkelus says parsa. Parsa is the veil, the curtain that blocks the light. But there wasn't one paroiches. The Gemara says in Maseches Ksubis, he brings in the second Maimed, then in the second Beis HaMikdash there were 13 paroiches. Yud Gimel paroiches. Yeah, because you had 7 gates. You had 7 gates to come in Maseches Midas. So each gate had a paroiches, and you had other parts like the Kodesh HaKadoshim. In the second, in the over there actually, second Beis HaMikdash that had paroiches over there, paroiches by the Heichel. The Gemara goes through Maseches Ksuvas Daf Kuvav all the 13 parachas. Why? Why there's so many parachas? So he says, "Shekoli shtalshalus, hakoli shtalshalus ma'olam v'ad olam oidei masach parsam mafsik ben kol olam." Because whenever you have to get from one world to another world, there's a parachas. So it's not one parachas. Every parachas dims the light further. It creates another filter, another restriction, another transformation, so that the light on the other side can be contained by the new world. If not, you would never be able to get to that new world. Like he says, if there was no parachas, everything would be one. If all, like the line that somebody once said, if the doors, and in many ways, much of Chassidus is to be able to experience this. If the doors of perception were cleansed, everything would appear as is, infinite. If the doors of perception were cleansed, or if there were no doors and veils that change the perception, every paraychis, what it does is it compromises the infinite. It puts a lid on the infinite. Tremendous filters, exactly. You know, sometimes you say this guy has no filters. And what does it usually mean? He doesn't fit into society, right? He says what everybody is thinking. You know those people, right? If you're blessed to have such people around. On one hand, it's the most refreshing thing in the world. It's like finally somebody says it as is, right? But everybody knows, the people closest to them is like, oh my God, what happens now? A chasana, a chuppah, no difference. An engagement, there's no filters. It's very refreshing because it's real, it's authentic. On the other hand, here we're talking about if there's no filter, then it's impossible even to come into this new reality. So our entire brain is also set up that way. How much does our subconscious get filtered in order to come into our conscious? How much of the internal self is actually coming out of my consciousness? Of course, everything is filtered. And maybe 99.9 remains, behind the curtain. Get out. Our brain, or get stuck. Our brain is very, very meticulous and very precise about what it's filtering. A little trickle of consciousness of what it feels we can deal with. What does it mean we can deal with? For me to be able to retain my identity and my Weltanschauung and my conduct and everything, everybody lives in their own identity. And too much information, and it's not just information, it's the experience of a whole other reality. Everything could shut down. Either you're gone or you become completely subsumed in a higher reality, which is really the same thing. So that's what Alter Rebbe is saying. It's really a mechanism, and it's the micro of the macro. It's a reflection of the entire world. That from Kodesh HaKadoshim, in order to get into Kodesh, you must have a paraychis. And then there's many others. This is the deeper meaning when you say Amachadesh B'tuvay. He creates a new everyday Ma'aseh Bereishis. She's Havus Me'ayin Li'yeshu Aydei Chidesh. The creation of Yesh Me'ayin, from nothingness, from no-thingness, again, from godliness, from infinity to Yesh. To something that has borders and boundaries and definition, and it's physical, always comes through a Chiddush. What do we mean through a Chiddush? The Hainu Aydei Masach U'Parsa Nasa Ur Chodesh Ur Shel Tulda. Through the veil, a new light is created, an Ur Shel Tulda. Ur Shel Tulda means a light that is essentially a child of the parent. And therefore, on one hand, you continue the life, but it's not the same. We all continue the life of our parents, of our grandparents, our great-grandparents, all the way back to Adam and Chava. But with each child, there's a new reality that's introduced. It's called Ur Shel Tulda. There's the Av and there's the Tulda. The Tulda is the child, the offspring. It's not the same fabric in its essence like the first light. And then when this new light descends and evolves furthermore, there's a new veil. Until finally, so many veils. And then at the end, the light comes in. What do you see? A physical reality. And that's what we know. That's what Hamachadish B'tuvah B'cholim Tamid Ma'aseh Bereishis. What the Alter Rebbe is saying here is that the word Hamachadish is not just like everybody thinks, that Hashem is constantly recreating the world. That's of course Pshat. That Baal Shem Tov says that the world is recreated every single moment. But here he's saying a new vart. And that is that creation itself is the process of a chiddush, meaning it's really answering a question. He says that in the explanation of the Maimer that he said on Shabbos. Why is it called yesh me'ayin, something from nothing? It doesn't seem respectful to call God nothing. You should say yesh me'hakadosh baruch hu, yesh me'haboyre. Why is he ayin and we're yesh? If anything is the other way, you should call it ayin me'yesh, like he says in one of the Maimarim. Somebody once said, we already have scientific evidence that there's life before birth. We have scientific evidence that there's life after death. The only thing we have to determine is if there's life after birth. That we're still trying to debate and figure out. Yeah. So this becomes the yesh, and the source becomes the ayin. It's a psabisal madna. So we have to explain, ayin doesn't mean nothing. We call it nothing. But why do Chazal even call it yesh me'ayin? The Ramban says, Bora is yesh me'ayin. Why do you call it ayin? So this is what he's explaining here. That actually, the yesh that we're experiencing is coming from ayin, meaning the original Ein Sof, if that was manifested, there would never be a yesh. So that has to go through a tremendous transformation, which relative to its source, that could be called ayin. So that's the chiddush. It's the light that is creating the yesh is a very, very different light than its own source. It's like a new light. So Hamachadish B'Tuva is not just that it's happening every moment, but it's happening by creating a new light every moment that goes through one veil, another veil, myriads, meaning perhaps endless veils, until it could finally produce this product which has its definition. However, we have to remember that there are many types of veils that separate. In the Mishkan it says, that's between holy and the holy of holies. And that too needs a masach. Because if not, everything would be echad, everything would be one. But we have another Havdalah. Like we say Motzei Shabbos, you separate between kodesh and chayil. Shehu masach mavdil gamur. This is already an absolute masach. This is a serious curtain that separates. You can compare it to the veil that separates between Kodesh and Kodesh HaKadoshim. Over there, it's an evolution of the same light. The light becomes more material. It becomes more concrete. But even after the veil, it stays holy. Yeah. It's true. Even in the first level, you can't compare the first light to the second light. If not, it would be Kodesh HaKadoshim, not Kodesh. But even after all the veils, it still says Kodesh. Like the Paraychas in the Beis HaMikdash, you had 13, but it was all the Beis HaMikdash. When you went to the other side of the Paraychas, you were still in the Beis HaMikdash. You were still in the place of holiness. It was not the Kodesh HaKadoshim, true. In the Kodesh HaKadoshim, nobody would survive because you would be subsumed into oneness and infinity. So you need the veil, so not everything should be echad. That's true. But that's still in the realm of Kodesh. So it's true, he says, it's nizgashim. The goes into, becomes nizgashim. Nizgashim means it's more consolidated. So it's more retainable because it goes through the filters. But it still retains the quality of Kodesh. So qualitatively, it's still in the same frequency. It's a question of degree. It's a question of intensity. It's a question of depth. It's a question of quantitative and qualitative infinity, so to speak. But it's that frequency, it's that realm. Between Kodesh and Chayil, it's not just a veil that filters the light, compromises the light. It does something else. It blocks the light. The product on the other side, in its own experience, is completely separate. That's the difference between Kodesh and Chayil. Kodesh means it's part of the world of holiness, which means it's part of the world of oneness, it's part of the world of infinity. Yes, there's Kodesh HaKadoshim and there's Kodesh Emes. Like you have Gan Eden HaElyon, you have Gan Eden HaTachton. Yeah. You have higher worlds, you have lower worlds. But they're all experiencing themselves as manifestations of the light, of Hashem's light. If there would be no parsa at all, if there would be no filter at all, they wouldn't experience themselves as Hashem's light. They would be the light itself. Everything would be echad. So you need a parsa, but it's still in the world of Kedusha. But then you have a mavdil ben kodesh l'chayil, and that's Motzei Shabbos, which comes into Yom Tov. We're not going into the regular week, we're going into Yom Tov. So what do we say? Ha mavdil ben kodesh l'kodesh. Why is there mavdil? If kodesh, the answer is even between kodesh and kodesh there's Havdalah. You can't compare the holiness of Shabbos to the holiness of Yom Tov. The holiness of Yom Tov is a downgrade from the holiness of Shabbos. You're allowed to cook on Yom Tov. So it's a downgrade, but it's still Kodesh. It's a different atmosphere. It's a different ambiance. We all understand. Going in from Shabbos to Yom Tov is not going in from Shabbos to Saturday night.
Isn't it an upgrade in some way just because it's less frequent?
Yeah, in some ways it's an upgrade. That's true. When it comes to Simcha and the things of Yom Tov. But in terms of Kedusha, of sanctity, of the intensity of not doing Malacha, it's a downgrade that it's not as forbidden and strict as Shabbos. Well, you could cook, I mean. But it's not the same geschmack, I understand. You're saying that's the downgrade. That's the downgrade. Yeah. So when it comes to Kodesh L'Chayil, Nasa Ha'or Nifrid Mamish. Now, what does Chayil mean? Chayil means mundane. Chayil means it's not holy. Chayil means it's just me. So this is a whole different type of masach. This is a masach that blocks it, that you don't even acknowledge that there's a light that came in. Kodesh acknowledges that there's a light. It just went through a filter. And therefore, it could retain the light in a way that it remains what it remains, outside of Kodesh HaKadoshim, and it accesses this oil. But when the masach is so powerful, that actually when it comes over on the other side, you take it for granted. You believe it was always here. It's you own it. You own it. This is me. You don't know the journey. They say a Maisa in Chelem, there was a debate. What's more important, the sun or the moon? They got into a big fight. So after 7 days of arguing, they decided that the moon is much more important than the sun. Why? Because the sun shines during the day when you don't need it. The moon is a chiddush because the moon shines at night. When you need it, it's dark, so you need the moon, right? Who needs the sun during the day? It's beautiful outside. Okay, today I think we need the sun. The masach is so successful, yeah, that you don't know there was a masach. It's all here. Everything is here. You take it completely for granted. That's nasa nifrid mamish. In its own perception, I'm completely separate. I don't see myself as a manifestation of oneness, as a manifestation of infinity. Now the ego is created. That's what he means. Nifrid mamish. Yeah. Yeah. As he said, the Targum says, Paroiches HaMasach in Aramaic is called Parsa. So in Kabbalah and Chassidus, a lot of places, the language will be Parsa. Parsa means a partition. A partition. A partition that fragments, it creates a fragmentation in the light. That's what it does.
So it's like a Torah source.
Fractal in geometry. You know what fractal is? A curtain. Okay, he wants a curtain. Yeah. So it's a limitation, and that becomes an interface. It becomes an interface, right? We must use these words today, because if you don't have an interface and you don't have these things, who understands what you're talking about? I don't understand what I'm talking about, but fine. But what's this idea? This interface, what's on the other side, it's an interface. So what's on the other side is completely changed from what's on the first side. But here's the difference. One is you know that it's an interface and it's still flowing. It's just flowing in a way that you're communicating the energy in a way that it could be retained, it could be absorbed, but it's essentially one continuum. So it's all called Kedusha. Kedusha means everything is a continuum. It's a continuum. There's no break. There's no absolute, what you call a quantum break, a leap, boom, cut off, at least in its own perception. Yeah.
In technology, it's basically an interface which has input and output. So
beautiful.
Output is a fractal of the
right. So the interface has input and then output. The output is a fractal of the input, and that's exactly the point of Hamavdil ben Kodesh l'Kodesh. And if it wouldn't be a fraction of it, fractal from the word fraction, like a part of it, a piece of it. If you would have the Oyer Kamoshahu without a parsa, so then everything is one. Everything is in the same state of consciousness as Kodesh HaKadoshim. So for there to allow different parts of the Beis Hamikdash where different avodas can happen, you have the Havdalah. The Alter Rebbe says in the second paragraph, but there's a new type of Havdalah. And this is the Havdalah that creates not Kodesh, but Chayil. It blocks it completely. You don't see it as an interface anymore, even though it is. That in its perception, it's nifred mamish, it's completely separated. I don't even know what you're talking about. And this is like the external chambers. This is like the Kabbalistic language for all the chambers, all the sanctuaries, but they're heichalos as chambers. In other words, places of consciousness that are chitzonim, they're external. What do we mean they're external? They're not in touch with their own pnimius. Hamagbiyim es atzmam loymar. They raise themselves, they exalt themselves to declare, Li ya'ori v'ani asisini. There's a verse in Yecheskel that Paroi says, the river is mine and I made myself. This is the absolute manifestation of this type of consciousness. The river is mine, the Nile River is mine, and I made myself. That's how Yecheskel Hanavi describes Paroi's statement. But in every one of Chetzolim, that's the message. Like somebody once said, this man is a self-made man, and he worships his creator. So, Li Ya'ori v'ani asisini. Ella, the emes is Shava'ata mechayes kulam. What's the truth? The truth is they're not nifra. The truth is, like we say in davening, from Divrei Hayamim, Va'ata mechayes kulam, every day. Va'ata, you mechaya, you give life as kulam to all of them. They're all vivified and animated by you. Not only that, the Gemara says in Menachos at the end, V'korei le'elakad alakaya. He says that even many nations, they call God the God of gods. So they acknowledge that there's Elokah, but there's Elokah de Elokaya. I'm also a God. He may be the ultimate CEO, he may be the owner, he may be the founder, and maybe he could fire me. But L'Poel Mamish, I manage this show. Yeah, he's in the Riviera in his house. He comes once a month he comes once a year for a board meeting. So maybe he's the Elokah, it's his money, it's his power. But here, I'm Elokah de Elokaya. So that's how the Gemara describes a certain perception of life. The God of gods. So he's the God of gods, he's the big God, but he's a God of gods. So that's all. They're not necessarily koifrim mamish. When you say mavdil mekayil, it doesn't mean that there's nothing there. But it's still nifred mamish. V'zeh, this is what we say in Tehillim. Hoidu le'lekei ha'elekim ki le'elam chazda. You should give gratitude to Elekei ha'elekim, to the God of gods, ki le'elam chazda. So he teaches, what does it mean? That the chesed, the hashpah, flows so downward. It goes from oilam vad oilam, from one world to another world to another world to another world, till the point that it could become a type of light that allows itself to be perceived as the God of gods. That's how infinitely distant the light travels, even into a space where there could be a consciousness that he's Elokei Elokim, meaning allowing for the presence of demigods or mini gods who see themselves as gods, rather than the truth. Where the truth is Einoid Malvadi, the truth is it's all oneness. But in a place of concealment and blockages and darkness, on this Masach Mavdil, unlike the other one, on this the Pasuk says, I will dress up the heaven with darkness. Kederis is darkness. In other words, it's a Masach that blocks completely. In its own perception of what comes on the other side, there's no flow anymore. You're not in flow. Kedusha always means I'm in flow. But I'm in flow in a way that I can be in flow. I could channel it. So for me to channel it, it has to be consistent with my vessels so that I could channel it. But that's what Kedusha means. You're in flow. You're channeling. You're just channeling. There's no ego. Ego is easing God out. Kedusha is bittul, surrender, alignment. You're in alignment. And everybody knows what that, at least some of us try it at least once in a while to be able to tune into that space. It's the most blissful and confident place to be. Liberating and humbling as well. It's also extremely humbling. There's no ego over there. Because you're channeling. You're just channeling. We all understand that you still need infinite filters. Because if I would touch, when you go to a little bit of a higher space, it's like, whoa, everything, death of ego happens on many, many levels. But even on the lowest level of Kedusha, there is a little bit of the death of ego. Somewhat of the death of ego. And then relative to a higher level, you're going through a parsa, you have to get ready. No, as long as I'm within this framework, things work. The moment you start peeking through the curtain to the other side, your nervous system already gets shaken up. This happens to people. When they have a premonition, what's the word? Premonition, right? Of something on the other side of the curtain. Sometimes God is inviting you. He said, okay, you lived in this side of the curtain for many years. It's time to step into the next one. So you get like a little premonition and you get scared. A lot of resistance because I already, on this side. I already built my empire on this side of the curtain. You know, you have a house, you have a job, life is, so to speak, predictable. And then when your empire starts falling apart, really what's happening is God is inviting you to go into the, it's time to step up. Come in a little closer. Your whole life you were on the outer porch. Maybe you want to come into the foyer. You have a beautiful foyer. It's very scary. The foyer has different realities. And then there's deeper and deeper and deeper, but it's all with Masachim. But still in flow. It's an element of flow. And then there's a whole other element. Then there's where flow stops. And flow stops doesn't mean that there's no God. I'm fine that there's a God, but it means that I'm a God. That's what he calls Nifrid Mamish. Nifrid Mamish doesn't mean I have to be a complete atheist. That's Stam Narishkeiten. But it means there's a God. Haidu le'elekei. But it's Elekei ha'elekim. What does it mean that I'm a God? It means that I'm responsible. I take ownership, not in a positive way. It means I have to take responsibility for the universe. I'm alone. There's a brokenness here. It's not just fragmentation as a fractal of the light so that you should retain it. It's where fragmentation breaks off from the source, that I don't realize I'm part of the source anymore. And that's where chaos comes in. That's where dysregulation comes in. That's where a lot of fear comes in. And that's where also all ego has to come in and all insecurity has to come in, and it's always the same thing. This is the reality of Hamad Mekadosh L'cha. And we say Haidu because we know it's his that itself is his doing. Haidu le'lekeya lekim kili olam chaznai, that the chesed travels so down from olam, from world, like forever. It travels to the point that it can allow for a perception that he is elekeya lekim. He's the big guy, he's the big boss, but he's removed. And over here in this world, in this company, I call the shots, and therefore I have to take responsibility, and I need to survive. And therefore, if I don't get angry at you, and if I'm not anxious, who's going to hold up the world? You? So I have to do it. Ve'enon kai from mamish. Yeah, they're not kai from mamish. Don't think that when he says nifrid, it means you're not a kaifer. Fakert, in some people, in some circles, you may be called very, very religious. Yeah. Ayn Rand, yeah. Well, I didn't hear that name in a while, Shishi. You're giving him shishi. Or that he needs shishi, you say. Yeah. So that's the second type of Havdalah. V'hinei b'b'chinas chayil zeh yesh beis b'chinas. In this chayil itself, there's two types. Of course. Aleph chayil gamur. You have what's called complete chayil, complete mundaneness, which is heichalas de noiga. These are the chambers known in Kabbalah as noiga. Noiga means, klipas noiga is a shell, it's a husk. Noiga means shining, there's a little light. The korelei lekad alekaya, because at least they call him the God of gods, keniskelel. But it's called chayil gamur, it's real chayil. It's complete mundane chayil. It's still not kofrim mamish. There's still some flow, some recognition at least that somebody could fire me, that there's accountability, something is there. But it's still nonetheless a perception of separateness. There's an expression in Chazal and Chagiga, chulin, shenas al. There were people that even when they ate chulin, they ate regular food, they used to eat it with the purity of karbonis. They were so careful, like Kohanim, for example, who were involved in the Beis HaMikdash karbonis. So even if you brought a regular challah, right, or a regular apple, it wasn't holy, it wasn't truma, right? You brought meat, it wasn't a carbon. So it's regular food. And essentially, you can eat it with impure vessels. You can eat it if you're impure. You can eat it if the food is impure. But there were those who were so careful that all their chulin was nasu al taras HaKodesh. Chulin is mundane food, not sacred food. Chayil, from the word chayil. So in Chazal, there's chulin shenas al. It's treated with the same sanctity of Kaddish. So this is a halachic term, but the Alter Rebbe uses this term, gevaldik, spiritually. And he says, there's a type of chayil shenasu al taras HaKadosh. It's dealt with the purity of Kaddish. And he gives another expression, chulei shel mayed. This is pshat chayil ha-mayed. What's chayil ha-mayed? Chayil ha-mayed is a contradiction. Mayed means a holiday. Chayil means a mundane day. So what are you mixing the two? Huh? So
before, this is exactly what I was thinking all the time. It's internally
internal contradiction. Yeah.
It can't exist except that
Yeah.
it makes it exist.
Yeah. Exactly.
It doesn't. It can't be.
Right.
It can't have full of
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that makes it.
Yeah. So for Chalamaya trips, it's good. No school. You stay home and you kvetch. 6 o'clock in the evening, you decide to go somewhere and it's closed. So fine, it works. We all know what Chalamaya trips. It used to be the circuses till they closed down the circuses. You remember? Ringling Brothers. Yeah. Father put you in a station wagon. It was a treat to go in the back, right? 12 people in the car with your neighbors and your first cousins. And you had hard-boiled eggs. And you went to the circus. And that was the epic experience of Yetzias Mitzrayim.
You complained about I had 15 siblings.
Yeah, I only have 4.
How do you sell
Our station wagon was comfortable.
So how do you sell the sexy mark?
Chalamai trip.
Yeah, Chalamayit is
That's how you sell. Oh, so the Rebbe says, what's pshat? This is a different. This is chayla shel mayed. What is chayla mayed? It's the chayil that becomes mayed. The hainu shenim shechar megdusha b'chinas bittel gam b'hachal. That means the light of kedusha flows even in the chayil. That there's a bittel. The bittel that we're talking about, the surrender, the alignment, the oneness, it flows into chayil as well. So it's chulin shenasu al taras HaKadosh, or it's chulay shel mayed. It's the chayil that becomes transformed into mayed. Just like we know that through observing Shabbos in an authentic way, there is a light in the 6 days of the week that come from the holiness of Shabbos. The week is a different week. The first 3 days of the week, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, is a flow from the previous Shabbos. The next 3 days of the week, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, is already experiencing the premonition, the energy of the new Shabbos. In fact, the Gemara says in Pesachim that the 3 days after Shabbos are called Basar Shabbata, after Shabbos, the after party, and the 3 days before Shabbos, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, are called Kamei Shabbata. It's the pre-Shabbos, the 4 year before Shabbos. What's the point? The point is that an authentic Shabbos experience doesn't stay in Shabbos. It flows out both frontwards and backwards. You can already start experiencing the next Shabbos on Wednesday. That's why in the Shir Shel Yom we say L'chuna Ranana. At the end of Shir Shel Yom of Wednesday, you see there's a few psukim from L'chuna Ranana. So it says because it's a preparation for Shabbos. And you could make Havdalah, but if you didn't make Havdalah Motzei Shabbos, you can make till Tuesday. Why till Tuesday? Because there's still a Kedusha of Shabbos that continues till Tuesday. You'll say, I don't know what you're talking about. By me already, Motzei Shabbos, 8 o'clock Shabbos is over. Everybody's on the phone. But the truth is, that's the Chiddush of Chol HaMoed. Chulin shenasu taras HaKadosh. That the real experience of Shabbos is one, not only for Shabbos, that the bittul continues in the Chol as well. Yeah.
Why do you call it premonition? Because premonition is like expecting the trouble.
Yeah, it's the wrong word. I meant
Preview, you mean?
a preview, like something. Sometimes when you're going on a journey, a few days before you already start experiencing the experience. Because the system, it starts taking in. Remember, there's a space that's beyond time, so it already takes in from that experience. Well, here it's not the butterflies in the stomach; it's the excitement in the stomach. Riser fever, yeah, flight fever, yeah. Somebody told me there was a Yid, he would do Malav Malka very, very late, very late. So it was once, I don't know, like 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning, Motzei Shabbos. So they asked him, do you know what time it is? So he says, yeah, it's still too early to welcome the next Shabbos. Whatever, somebody told me a story years ago, it's still too early to welcome the next Shabbos. So that's the idea of Chulin shenasu al taras HaKadosh. And this is really the gift that's communicated to the Jewish people in the 6 days of work, that it should all come from Kedushas Shabbos. What does that mean? Not that Shabbos is Sunday. Shabbos is not Sunday. And Shabbos is not Monday. You can't compare the two. But that all of their actions, all of their life patterns and behaviors in middle of the week should have the quality of chulin shenasu al taras hakodesh. It's chulin. It's chayil. You make Havdalah. But it's nasu. It's inspired. It's molded. It's crafted with the purity, with the holiness of kodesh. So this is a different type of chayil. You have a chayil that's chayil gomer. It's a break from Shabbos. Shabbos stops and you go into chayil. It's over. Because the masach is very powerful. That's what he said, nasa nifrid mamish. And then you have a second type of chayil, which is like chayil amoyed. Even though l'chayr it's a conflict, if it's moyed, it's not chayil. That's this chiddush of chayil that it's nasu al taras hakodesh. V'zeu inyan Havdalah b'Motzei Shabbos. This is the real idea of Havdalah. Why do you make Havdalah? We make Havdalah and you say, Baruch HaMavdil ben kodesh l'chayil. What's this idea? Blessed is the one who separates between kodesh and chayil. So some say it's just an acknowledgement. It's part of honoring Shabbos. You honor Shabbos when it comes in through Kiddush, and you honor Shabbos when it leaves through Havdalah. Like you welcome the guest and you say goodbye to the guest, right? That's Pashtus. It's part of covered Shabbos. You welcome him. Chazal say b'knisasei u'b'yitziyasei. The queen comes in, you open up the door and welcome her, and the queen leaves and you escort her, like we say, Malava Malka means you're escorting the queen. That's Pashtus. But Alter Rebbe says, what's the baruch? Blessed is the one who separates. So he says, Havdalah is a deep avodah. Havdalah is not stam. Okay, Shabbos is over. Time to say goodbye. You know, time for pizza, yeah, or whatever your Motzei Shabbos schedule looks like. The word bracha comes from the word means hamshacha. Like we always say, hamavrich es hagefen. When you take the Mishnah says, mavrich means you take a vine, for example, and you mavrich it. Mavrich it is that you bend it. You bend it, and you put it. You take a sapling, you take a branch, and you put it into the earth, so a new vine grows. So that's called mavrich. Bracha in Hebrew, brecha is a pool, because it channels water from the source into a pool. So, and whenever they say bracha, it's really accessing something from the source and allowing it to flow and communicate into a new place. So what's baruch atah Hashem? Hamavdil ben kodesh l'cha. Say kodesh l'cha ben l'cha ben yisraelam. Baruch atah Hashem hamavdil ben kodesh l'cha. So he says it's a bracha, it's hamshacha sheyu hachul nasim al taras hakodesh. That you're saying it's a moed dikavart. Baruch atah Hashem hamavdil. You're acknowledging and you're asking God that His energy should be manifested in the Havdalah. That you should realize that the separation is also divine. So that when you go to the other side, you weren't abandoned. You don't have to become a nifid. You don't have to go in now to the depressing 6 days with pressure and anxiety and suddenly you're holding up the whole world together. The Havdalah is also Him. Baruch atah Hashem. It's almost you're asking, can you be manifested? Can you flow? Can I realize that the Havdalah is also, you created the curtain. So the other side of the curtain is just it's an opportunity, it's a challenge, it's the circus in which my life plays itself out. But it's still the same oneness. That's what Havdalah is. It's a different type of Havdalah. You hear the art. Baruch, huh?
Every week it's
yeah, every week is Chalamayit, which means no school, which is great, no school. That's the good thing. And you quit your job too, yeah. Yeah. No tuition, garnished, yeah. Just have to pay for Six Flags. You got a ticket for Six Flags, they have a whole, you could be a subscriber. Avada, it's a whole different depth in Havdalah, right? It's bracha meloshen amshach. It's interesting. Blessed God that He separates. Okay, thank you. You separate, so I have to go back to work. Who asked you to separate? Don't separate. Right. So if Taka you hate Shabbos, right? You have already people 2:00 Shabbos afternoon. They're at the clock, making sure you don't eat shalom too late. So chas v'shalom, it shouldn't compromise the milchiks of Motzei Shabbos, because then your whole life will be destroyed. La'olam vad, because you don't have the healthy milchiks of Motzei Shabbos. So I understand. Baruch Hamad. Thank you for Havdalah. Let's move on with this. But obviously that's not how the Alter Rebbe understood Shabbos. So it's the opposite. What's the grace of Baruch here? The pshat is Baruch is Meloshen Hamshacha. You're bringing the Ein Sof into the Havdalah. They say it's such a beautiful story. They say about Rabbi Moshe Leib Sasaver. He was one of the students of the Maggid. That it was once Mitzvah Yom Tov, And the Chassidim, they were leaving, and they were very, very, there was like a melancholiness. At the end of Tishrei, you finish, Simchas Torah, the last fill of Shalosh Regalim. It's like there's a certain, an emptiness. And he looked at them and he said, "Ihr sollt nicht vergessen, der selbe Ribono shel Olam von Ata bechartanu is the Ribono shel Olam von Ata chenantanu." The same God of Ata v'chartanu is the same God of Ata chenantanu. Ata v'chartanu, that's Yom Tov. Ata v'chartanu mikol ha'amim, ahavta yisonu retzisa banu, right? V'shimcha Haggadah, and then there's Ata chenantanu. It's like, okay. So he said the same Ribono shel Olam of Ata v'chartanu is Ata chenantanu. So that succinctly is capturing this Nakuda. That's what the Nakuda of Havdalah is. So why do you have to make Havdalah? Don't make Havdalah. You have to make Havdalah. Because if you don't make Havdalah, you're not acknowledging the challenge. And when you don't acknowledge the challenge, you bypass the challenge. And bypassing doesn't help you connect the dots. Bypassing just puts me in denial. And then when I wake up to reality, it comes back to bite me. You understand? Havdalah is acknowledging, you have to acknowledge that there's a passageway, that there's a radical transition. And yet, there is something to do about it. So that's so important. It's closure. Closure means I acknowledge, Right, there's no disconnection. There's no disconnection. Closure means you're acknowledging that this is a new stage. But we can deal with it. When you deny that there's closure, when you deny, somebody, people who go into a relationship and then suddenly they disappear without closure. Because it's too painful. We have to acknowledge Havdalah has to happen. But what is the teichen of Havdalah? That it's not an absolute gulf where we forget about everything. It's chulin shenasu al taras hakodesh. It's the chol that's informed with the kedusha. What? Yeah. That's in other words, the whole idea of Havdalah is on one hand you're acknowledging that there's a separation. It's called Hamavdil. Why are you saying Hamavdil if it's Chulin Shenasa? Because it's not Kodesh, it's Chulin, it's Chol HaMoed. Chol HaMoed is not the same halachas like Yom Tov. Right? Yeah.
With the Rab's permission, I just have this big overarching theme that seems to be emerging. That really, it's impossible for us to have in this world. It can't be, right? And all these things are internal contradictions. The Aron's a contradiction, right? The Aron can't exist, like we spoke about this. It's not physically possible, and yet it exists. Chol HaMoed can't exist, right? You have Moed, you can't. All these things can't exist. Hashem created all these things that can't exist in this world in order to show what He is, to be Yachol. It's a bunch of irreconcilable things, and yet they exist. So we just have to say this proves Hashem.
Yeah, beautiful. Beautiful. Shekayach, beautiful, Reb Josh.
You can call me Yosef Chaim.
Reb Yosef Chaim.
When I make a
Hamavdil ben Kodesh L'chal. Yeah. So Havdalah, instead of it being a break and a barrier that interrupts the flow, on the contrary, it's really acknowledging the new opportunity, the new gift, the new arena in which life goes. So there's really, it's a continuum. Integration, exactly. So that's already a different type of chayil. This is chulin shenasu al taras hakodesh. It's not easy, by the way, psychologically and emotionally, you see that Motzei Shabbos is a very hard time for people, especially if you're sensitive, right? I see some of you are nodding. It's true. Jews suffer Motzei Shabbos from a condition some of us call PSS, post-Shabbos syndrome. And it's not so easy. You see even Chazal instituted psamim, right? And if it's something that really gives a smell, they said Pasha to revive you because the Neshama Yisera leaves. There's an extra Neshama that leaves. And you see Taka that Motzei Shabbos, people feel this void and they think that through pizza or something else it's going to be filled. But really it's a different type of void that can't be filled through pizza. I've tried it many times. I know. I'm talking from experience. It's an inner void that's not so tangible. So you think you go out, you have to go out Motzei Shabbos. But really, you're addressing something very, very deep. The soul, which sees reality, experiences a new masach. Like this mimer really clarifies it, because the soul really is experiencing a quantum leap of reality. Like you were thrown into a world on the other side of the curtain. Like from Kodesh into Chayil. So it's a very, very deep avodah to be able to remain grounded and anchored. Yeah, an ice plunge, from a very hot sauna. The hot sauna to the ice plunge. But the ice plunge gives amazing opportunities to be able to experience a new reality and actually help a person in very many ways. So it's a very profound experience. And that's really what Baruch means. This also gives perspective when you make a bracha. Right? What he's saying here is, he says Havdalah is what? Habrachi am shachash yiachul nas al taras hakodesh. I want you to understand this. You say Baruch Hashem l'keinu melech haolam b'orei priya eitz. What does that mean? Blessed are you that you created the fruit. B'orei priya adama, amaytzu lechem min haaretz, b'orei priya gafen. So you're thanking Hashem, you're giving gratitude. That's of course, but there's something much deeper. It's almost a request. It's not just you're blessed, you're a good guy, you're amazing, which is also great, but it's much deeper than that. It's really Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam b'orei priya eitz. I want that my experience of eating this orange should be one in which you're being manifested through the orange and through the eating. Baruch Melashon Hamshacha. I can drink a cup of coffee. It's nice, it's good, it's geschmack. But what if I could drink a cup of coffee and experience intimacy with God? What if I can eat an apple and I'm experiencing intimacy with Ein Sof? I'm eating a banana or eating a piece of chicken or a tomato or a salad and you're experiencing intimacy. That's what the bracha is. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam. You're asking, there should be hamshacha. It's really all you, it's your reality. It looks like a coffee, but it's really Einaid Milvad, it's divine energy. It just went through so many mesachim, so it looks like coffee. Coffee in Atzilus looks a little different. I don't know what it looks like over there, but it tastes a little different. But it's all, that's what he's saying. There's nothing in the world that's not coming from the pure divine energy. Just the question is, how many curtains? That's it. If there's enough curtains, it becomes coffee. It becomes an orange, it becomes a potato. Yeah. In Kabbalah it says, Tapuach is Malchus Datzilus. Well, an apple is not Malchus Datzilus. Of course it is. If you know the energy of an apple, if you know the chemistry of an apple, and you go higher and higher and higher and higher, you're going to bump into Malchus Datzilus. Chakal Tapuch Kaddish, exactly. Yeah, that's what we say. But Arizal says the meal Friday night is the meal of the Chakal is a field of holy apples. Who's eating holy apples? But that's what it is, Tapuch Kaddish, Chakal Tapuch Kaddish. So everything is that way. The question is just how many veils. So what if I could drink my coffee or drink the cup of water or a cup of juice or whatever it is and see it from the other side of the veil? It's actually an experience of connection. So that's what a bracha is.
How are they really higher or lower levels? Like you connect with the coffee, so you connect.
You're right. From Hashem's perspective, all the levels are one. Eina chanami, you're right. Hashava mashva katan v'gadol. Like we always learn that the tzimtzum is not kipshutai, right? But we're talking the perception and the intuitive experience, which is also real, of all these worlds, is that it's real. And that's the world we're supposed to live in. Yes, if the moment the soul leaves the body, right, what do you think happens? All the doors of perception are all cleansed. The veils are removed. The whole reality changes in an instant. Even in this world, there's certain moments in people's journeys that what they thought was reality, they realize it's like a coffee bean. It's like a cholent bean. And the whole reality was completely eclipsed. Anybody knows what I'm talking about? Huh? Not Shabbos cholent. The whole world is a Shabbos cholent, yeah? It's like suddenly you see, the whole world I lived in is as big as a coffee bean, right? And reality is completely, it's like, whoa. Just that, the humility of that, and the gratitude of that. Because, wow, I was liberated from living in a cholent bean my entire life and fighting the world to hold on to my cholent bean. Imagine you ferociously fight everybody to hold on to your cholent bean. And everybody's fighting for the same bean, exact. Very good. You nailed it. You nailed that cholent bean. And you know what? That cholent bean is also divine. But there's just a little more than the cholent bean, or a lot more. The cholent bean is also important as a cholent bean. So even in our own world, we know the moment you cross the border to one paroiches, it's a whole different reality. You understand the answer? So true from Hashem's perspective, Einoid Movada, but this is the arena that we live in. So I can't just, say, I'm journeying to a different world, I'm going to the other paroiches. Some people try to do that. But it's not the kavanah. Not the Venaviyu, exactly. They were done. We're done. We're finished. They were just authentic people. The Rechaim says they were done. They wanted to kiss God, and that's what they did. And literally, they went behind the paroiches. Very good. That's exactly what they did. The Gemara says they went in lifnai v'lifnim. Lifnai v'lifnim means you go in to see the world from the other side. You could see it from the other side, but you're just not coming back. You get stuck exactly. So in other words, they went in drunk to the Beis HaMikdash. It doesn't mean they went in drunk. They weren't alcoholics. Shsuya yayin, it says, Shsuya yayin is a metaphor. That they became inebriated. No, they wanted to lose their consciousness, and they did. Their ego consciousness, there was the death of ego. We once learned before Purim, the Gemara says, was once a meal of Purim. Come Rabbi shachtel Reb Zera. Rabbi stood up and he shechted Reb Zera. The next day he prayed for him and he resurrected him. And then the Gemara says, this is a Maseches Megillah Daf Zayin. The next year he invited him again for a Suda. So Reb Zera said, I'm sorry, miracles don't always happen. Right? So it's one of the funniest stories in Gemara. You murder somebody because you're drunk, Rabbi. I mean, some of us have been drunk in life. So you take a knife and you murder somebody. I was once at a Sudas Purim, and a guy got into an argument with somebody else, and he picked up a knife and he said, come Rabbi, be careful, come Rabbi. So this is Rabbi, and we still respect him because you got drunk, you murdered, and Abzeda, and you waited till the next day. You didn't sober up. The guy is dead. He's in a river of blood. You didn't sober up. The next day, he davened for him. So now this murderer suddenly knows how to do Tchiyas HaMesim. Really, wow. And then the next year, he has a chutzpah. He invites him for a Suda. And instead of Abzeda telling him, you're a criminal, 911, you should be behind bars, he says, I would love to, but miracles don't always happen. It's one of the biggest ployim. It's a pelad de. That's why many Mefarshim say you can't learn it kipshuta. It doesn't mean that. It means he got sick. He gave him too much to drink. But it's a very funny way of saying that he made him sick by giving him too much to drink, by saying he stood up and he shechted him. So there was once a Shabbos after Purim. This is 1984. I still remember the Rebbe at a Fabrengen after Purim. He spoke about this Gemara, and he asked all these questions. And he said, Amoyre de Kabir. He said, the pshat is, it's kipshutai. But it's not the way we understand kipshutai. Of course he died. But the pshat is, there was such a gilui of Pnimiyas HaTorah that literally Rabbi and Abzeda went on an experiential journey of the divine. But Rabbi means big. He had kalim. Reb Zera is small. He didn't have the kalim, so he died. Come Rabbi, he stood up. Shachta, the Gemara says, Shachat is Ein Shachat Alo Mashach. And he brought him into that realm and he died. But it was like Nadav and Avihu. It was the death of the soul that experiences the bliss of infinity on the other side of the curtain, and therefore I can't be contained in the kalim anymore. If the electricity is too powerful, the voltage is intense, the wires burn. Our guf can only be what it is through tzimtzum, through tremendous amount of tzimtzum. We don't realize that. But most of our existence is based on our ignorance, right? We think our existence is based on what we have. It's based on what we don't have. Huh? The moment you go into that space, it's checkmate. And you're very happy about it. It's not a torturous experience. It's beautiful. It's a place of complete oneness and love. But the whole avodah of a person is chulin shenasot haras hakodesh, chulamayid, not to stay in kodesh hakadoshim. You're not allowed to stay in kodesh hakadoshim. Even the Kohen Gadol is not allowed to stay there. So the next year he invited him again. Let's do it again. And he said, I would love to. It was the best night of my life. But I work for God. And the miracles may not happen again. I may not come back. I remember the Rebbe said, when a neshama tastes reality, it's very hard to come back down. I remember those words he said in Yiddish. It's not easy for a neshama to come back down. We look at it the other way. It's like, oh my God, you died. He says, once the neshama is there, It's not an easy thing to come back down. This was the Shabbos after Purim, Tovshin Mem Daled, 1984. Yeah, that's Sikha. When he explained it, I remember he said that. He said, I remember that. I still that when a Shama is there, it's not. And the Bzeda knew that. And that's the miracle he was referring to. He wasn't only referring to that God won't let him come down, that he won't let himself come back down. And that's against the Kavanah. The Kavanah is v'chai behem v'lo sheyamos behem. Nadav and Avihu are considered a sin. Right. So that's a classic example of crossing the border. Now, from Hashem's perspective, Rabbi Oliver says, what's the difference? The cup of coffee and Atzilus, you're right. But in our intuitive experience, we don't have to describe how much the ego is the dominant force. That's the tikkun. Okay, we'll take a break here. And Be'ezer Hashem will continue tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. and Blina to finish the Maimer. Everybody have a beautiful day, both in your Kodesh HaKadoshim, your Kodesh, and in your Chulin. Shenasu al Taras HaKodesh. It's not Shabbos, you go work, no? Oh. You know why Chayil is called Chayil? You know why Chayil is called Chayil? Reb Shmuel, 1 second. You know why Chayil is called Chayil? What does Chayil mean in Hebrew? Sand. Why is Chayil called Chayil? Why is it called sand? What do you think? You know why? You can't plant anything in sand. Sand is rootless. It's not connected to anything. If you take soil and earth, right, they're connected together, and you could plant something and develop roots. But sand, try something planting in sand, the wind comes, it's gone with the wind. So what's chayil? Chayil means something that's rootless. It's rootless. In other words, it's not connected. They're not connected to each other, and it doesn't allow for connection. So chayil means when there's a gap, and you're not feeling the rootedness of yourself, you're not anchored in your source. That's the definition of chayil. So why did they choose this word? Because this captures it most. Kedusha means you're in flow, which always means you're in continuum, which always means you're in connection. My roots are up there. It says in Kabbalah and Chassidus, by the tree, the roots are on the bottom. By a person, the roots are on top. Did you ever see, I think in Las Vegas, they have a tree, it's upside down. The roots go up instead of down. You ever saw that? It's an interesting phenomenon. I saw it once. It's fascinating. So by a person, the roots are not down. The roots are up. Right, so think about it. We have roots. We just like a tree. You don't see the roots, but we also have roots. The roots are here, and the roots connect us to the Ein Sof. Yaakov Chevel Nachalosai. In Chayil, that's kedusha. In Chayil, it doesn't allow for roots, so it's a sense of separateness. Every grain of sand is I'm on my own. There's no cohesion, and that's the idea of Mavdil ben Kodesh l'Chayil. And Chulin Shenasu Taras HaKodesh is to bring that into Kedusha. So it's just very interesting. Yeah, Chayil is sand, yeah. When people don't have, the opposite of Kedusha is not profanity. People say holy, profane, right? Holy, secular. The opposite of holiness is rootlessness, not having roots, not being connected. Yeah. So we say the antithesis of addiction is not sobriety. The antithesis of addiction is attachment, not sobriety. Sobriety is what we want, but that's not the opposite of addiction. The opposite of addiction is you're attached, you're feeling connected. The outcome will be sobriety. You don't want to destroy yourself. If I'm feeling connected, I don't want to destroy myself. I respect myself. Right? So that's the power here. It's a very powerful idea. The opposite of kodesh is not profanity. There will be profanity. It's not. It's that I have no roots. I don't experience my roots. It's like a tree. You literally cut it off its roots. What happens to the tree? Of course it goes into addiction. It needs to live. If you're connected to your roots, you have water. You have nutrients. If you're not connected to your roots, what do you have? So you need heroin, or at least alcohol, or at least a phone addiction. You need something. The tree needs to live. It doesn't have roots. When you have roots, You don't need your phone. You have flow. You're in flow. So kedusha means you're in flow. Chayil means there's disconnection. Okay, have a beautiful day.
It's not the other way around that, you attach to your phone and on Shabbos you attach from it.
No, it's so true that you see the opposite of addiction is connection. Huh? Yeah. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for coming and gracing us with your presence. Nobody has anything to do today? Mezitz does a chalamayit. You want to go on a chalamayit trip? It's too early in the morning to go on a chalamayit trip. Yeah.